Hello and welcome to News Round, a recap of stories that made headlines during the week. I'm Kayode Kikulu. First, the headlines. Former Commonwealth Secretary General Chief Emeka Anyaoku calls for a new constitution for the nation rather than yet another amendment. Senate confirms Olukoyede as chairman of Economic and Financial Crimes Commission EFCC and Halimah Shehu to head National Social Investment Program Agency. Federal Executive Council proposes the sum of 26.01 trillion naira for the 2024 budget to be submitted to the National Assembly. Plus, Israel and Hamas trade blames over explosion at the Al-Aqli Arab Hospital in Gaza, which killed hundreds of people. Well, News Round begins with a call by former Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Chief Emeka Anyaoku, for a new Nigerian constitution. Chief Anyaoku, who was speaking at the 2023 convocation lecture of Babalola University in Ado-Ekiti, says the current constitution has lost its relevance and only a brand new one can take the country out of what he describes as a doldrums.
It's the 2023 convocation lecture of Babalola University in Ekiti State, and distinguished attendees are here to see the guest speaker, former Secretary General of the Commonwealth, analyze the paper focusing on management of diversity, a major challenge to governance in pluralistic countries.
If truth be told.
From a wider perspective, Chief Anyaoku profiles countries that successfully managed their diversities and those that failed, including those bedeviled by religious and sectarian differences.
It is an undeniable fact that Nigeria's diversity was more successfully managed in the early years of our country's independence. During that period, Nigeria's diversity was perceived by all as a source of strength and inspirer of national unity.
Narrowing down to Nigeria, Chief Anyaoku is worried at the current economic downturn, the spate of insecurity and the level of corruption that has fueled global disdain of Nigeria and Nigerians, and he profiles a way out.
I call on the presidency, in consultation with the National Assembly, instead of continuing to tinker with the 1999 Constitution, to acknowledge the urgent necessity of a new constitution to be made by the people of Nigeria. To this end, I invite the federal government to immediately embark on the following practical steps. First, convene a National Constituent Assembly of directly elected on a non-party basis representatives whose task would be to discuss and agree a new constitution for the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The founder of ABUAD, Chief Babalola, who has also made similar calls in the past, is excited to see a respectable Chief Anyaoku share his thoughts for a new constitution that takes politics as service to the people.
People believe that the only lucrative business in this country today is politics. I refer to it. And if it is politics, what politics is about? It is the Constitution, which has made politics the only lucrative business. not law, not engineering. We have, for 30 years, I've been writing about the Constitution. The root cause of our problem, unless we address it, that mindset will remain.
Although other commentators here align with most of Chief Anyoku's recommendations, the responsibility of having a new constitution lies with state and federal lawmakers. That is, after it must have been put to a debate by Nigerians. Babajide Agbeyo, Channels Television News.
To the National Assembly now, where the Senate this week confirmed the appointment of Mr. Olukoyede as the new chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. The lawmakers also confirmed the appointment of Mrs. Halimah Shehu as the national coordinator of the National Social Investment Program Agency.
It's the second legislative day of the week in the Senate. The first business of the day is the screening of some nominees of President Bola Tinubu.
The request of Mr. President.
The leader of the Senate moves a motion for the Senate to admit the nominee for the position of the national coordinator of the National Social Investment Program Agency. She is ushered in and allowed to introduce herself.
I joined politics in 2010. By 2011, I was appointed as the Senior Special Assistant to the Executive Governor of Katsina State.
The senators seek clarification on some issues regarding the activities of the agency.
We have also got $800 million from the World Bank. This office is going to be in charge of distributing this money to the poor and the needy in the society, the poor and the vulnerable group in the society. Mr. President, how sure are we that this money will be distributed equitably?
You put it on record that you were able to do that in 613 local governments, and 116 local governments were not covered. What was the reason for that?
Next, the Senate admits the nominees for chairmanship and secretary of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. And the nominees start by introducing themselves.
By way of executive education, I'm also an alumnus of Harvard Kennedy School, University of Harvard, and also University of Oxford in UK, where I had an executive education program in public corruption management.
I was admitted into the University of Maiduguri in 1983 to study BSc Accountancy. I graduated in 1987. Thereafter, I did my NYSC in Allied Bank in Niger State.
The senators also have questions on how they intend to pilot their affairs.
In 2022, we are flagging over 2,000 something convictions. But all is minor crime that if you add up, does not total to one crime, financial crime committed by an individual, which I will not mention, and then the EFCC allowed him to go home on a self-recognition.
Are you supposed to just invite and detain a person on a petition from anybody, or you must have concrete evidence that that crime have actually been, committed?
The Senate then takes a decision on the nominees.
The nomination of Mr. Olukoyede is hereby confirmed as chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC.
Some of the senators react to some controversies surrounding the nomination of Mr. Olukoyede.
He thinks that people will not just be visited because of political situations, but they will be investigated because, if they commit crime. If they don't commit crime, there's no point. So there's no going to be victimization of political opponents.
And then when we look at the dictionary meaning of cognate, cognate is relevant. Relevant qualification, relevant experience. Doesn't mean that cognate experience must be garnered or within the confines of EFCC.
The Senate then adjourns plenary for the week ahead of its retreat at Ikotepene in Akwa Ibom State. Daily Omoyeni, Channels Television News.
From the Senate to the House of Representatives, where the lawmakers are calling for the appointment of more justices to the Supreme Court in order to fill the vacancies at the Apex Court.
It's the final plenary session of the week in the House of Representatives as lawmakers consider a motion of urgent public importance on speedy justice delivery. The House is calling for the appointment of more justices for the Supreme Court.
Aware that the Supreme Court's docket is full for the year 2023, as parties cannot have hearing dates for matters filed within the year, except in election petitions, owing to a considerable volume of matters pending before the court. Worried that the non-appointment of new justices to the Supreme Court has stalled expeditious, effective, and efficient justice delivery, impeded transactions and economic development, limited citizens' access to justice, put the current justices of the court under immense mental and physical pressure, and has affected the policy-making function of the court.
Meanwhile, the House is worried about the plan to use concrete for road construction in the country.
Worried that the Honorable Ministry of Works' new policy on cement concrete pavement adoption without in-depth studies of the comparative advantages / disadvantages with asphalt may contradict technical specification, potentially leading to contract breaches and potential arbitration and litigation during a challenging economic time.
In the meantime, the lower chamber is asking for a total ban on the local production, importation, and use of any educational material that contains such words that teach or promote lesbianism, gayism, bisexual, and transgenderism in schools throughout the country.
Nigeria has cultural values. We need to strengthen our cultural values. This timely motion is needed to stop what is going on around the world. We need to stand firm. Some African countries are being bullied to join.
Mr. Speaker, as you said in our generation, I will get personal and tell you that I moved my daughter from a school whose name I will not mention for obvious reasons. When I found out at the nursery level, they thought it was okay for bathrooms to be shared.
We cannot be importing cultures that are alien to our behavior. So, Mr. Speaker, this particular motion, I wholeheartedly will support it, and if need be, we extend it to our secondary schools and our universities.
Thank you. The action of the House is in line with the existing law against same-sex marriage in the country. The House is proposing the criminalization of the importation or usage of LGBTQ contents in Nigerian schools. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Welcome back. Let's talk elections now. One of Nigeria's foremost election observer groups, Yaga Africa, is making recommendations for further electoral reforms, such as the need to review the format of ballot papers to include the photographs of candidates.
These are members of the Yaga Africa Election Observer Mission to Liberia, where they monitored the general election that took place recently, and they are holding this news conference in Abuja to brief on their preliminary report. On October 10, 2023, Liberians filed out to vote in the country's presidential election under the watch of several local and international observer missions. Members of the Yaga Africa Election Observer Group who monitored the exercise speak on their observations in this preliminary report.
We did observe a firm commitment on the part of the Electoral Commission to ensure transparency and openness in the management of the results collation or tallying process. The election officials, meticulously enforced the counting and results tallying procedures. And in cases where objections and queries were raised by party agents and observers on matters relating to inconsistencies or computational issues, they were addressed promptly in the full view of everyone.
Also, as part of observation, in addition to everything else that has been said, was also the role that the media played. You could see that they had a commitment to independence and fairness. And in the programs that were broadcast, which we were privileged to listen to on radio, we found out that a number of them, were very committed to peace, to fairness, and to patriotism.
Beyond these observations, the group is calling for some reforms in Nigeria's electoral system.
We're also recommending that INEC should review the format of ballot papers used in Nigeria to include photographs and names of candidates to improve the quality of electoral preferences and reduce, incidence of invalidated votes. But in addition to that, that the National Assembly also reviews the electoral law to address, some ambiguities in the results collation and transmission process.
INEC tries in other parts, but there is room for improvement that INEC can also learn. INEC cannot say it knows everything. Like the issue of the overbloated register, I believe that it is actually overbloated. INEC, like I said earlier, has to find another way whereby it can reduce the number of the people that are already dead that are on that register.
Elections in Nigeria are in a cycle of 4 years, and members of the Yaga Africa Group believe strongly that there is an urgent need to pursue those reforms in Nigeria's electoral system ahead of the next general election in 2027.
15 million vulnerable households will receive 25,000 naira over the next 3 months under the federal government's conditional cash transfer program. For the Tinubu administration, this is a promise fulfilled less than a month when the scheme was proposed by the president.
Matching words with action, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akume, and other government officials are at the press gallery of the presidential villa for the flag-off of the Conditional Cash Transfer Program, which coincides with the commemoration of the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. According to the National Bureau of Statistics report, over 133 million Nigerians were multidimensionally poor in 2022, and with the removal of fuel subsidy taking a toll on the livelihood of the citizens, the cash transfer program is expected to provide over 60 million of the citizens with some relief for 3 months, as explained by the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation.
15 million households will be receiving 75,000 naira over a space of 3 months. This equates to about 61 million Nigerians directly benefiting from the conditional cash transfer.
The immediate past administration had a similar program which attracted mixed feelings, largely for alleged lack of accountability in the implementation process. However, the present administration is promising to do things differently.
The audit trail is there. The mechanism that is going to be used is one that is biometric. It is proven. You will be able to name every single person that has received those funds. So Nigerians can rest assured that this is an efficient and accountable way of providing relief to poor Nigerians.
The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akume, represented the President at the event, and he outlines other plans the administration has.
The government is working to develop and deploy several more solutions and interventions to help Nigerians of all walks of life. These include A, investment of 100 billion to purchase 3,000 units of 20-seater compressed natural gas powered buses, investment of 200 billion naira to cultivate 500,000 hectares of farmland to improve food security.
A symbolic presentation of a 25,000 naira check is made to 5 beneficiaries drawn from different parts of the country.
A lot of data have been captured. This money is going to be transferred, not given by hand to an individual. So it could be traced.
This is a landmark achievement worth celebrating for the federal government, but many Nigerians are hoping to see how transparent the process will be, ensuring that those targeted for the scheme are the ones who will get the benefits at the end of the day. From the presidential villa, Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the Federal Executive Council has proposed an aggregate expenditure of 26 trillion naira for the 2024 budget that will be presented to the National Assembly for consideration. Well, this was disclosed by the Minister of Economic Planning and Budget, Mr. Atiku Bagudu, after the Federal Executive Council meeting at the Presidential Villa during the week.
President Bola Tinubu arriving for what is the second Federal Executive Council meeting of this administration. The first part of the day's meeting is the swearing-in ceremony for 3 newly appointed ministers. One after the other, their citations are read and they take their oath of office. The ministers were assigned their portfolios, with Jamila Bio Ibrahim as the Minister of Youths, Ayodele Olawande, Minister of State Youths, and Balare Lawal as Minister of Environment. This brings the number of ministers in the federal cabinet to 48. The meeting then went into a closed-door session. Afterwards, 7 ministers briefed journalists on the resolutions reached. The Council approved the 2024 to 2026 medium-term expenditure framework and the fiscal strategy paper.
The assumptions include oil price benchmark, which I said for 2024, we are assuming 73.96, oil production of 1.78 million barrels a day, exchange rate of 700, then the inflation of 21% and GDP growth rate of 3.76%. The aggregate expenditure is estimated at 26.01 trillion naira for the 2024 budget.
The minister also confirmed that a supplementary budget is being worked on, while the administration is hoping to sign the 2024 budget before the last day of 2023.
There will be a supplementary budget because, of course, there are continuing obligations and there are responses to security which can be immediate. So Mr. President is mindful of those and is assessing them. But Mr. President is also committed to the budget process and its integrity. So he wants to ensure that monies that are appropriated will be can be spent in the period for which they are appropriated.
The Minister of Finance spoke on the $1.5 billion loan secured from the World Bank.
Things are tough. Mr. President is aware, and that is why he has the intervention package, 500 billion naira, as well as other measures, including a wage award and later on a new wage structure for the country. So I think that answers all the questions about the 1.5 billion, why and how soon, and use of proceeds. It goes straight into the balance of payments, goes straight into the reserves to support the effort to improve the country's fiscal situation, to improve government finances.
It has been disclosed that henceforth, Federal Executive Council meetings will take place on Monday each week. It was, however, made clear that that did not necessarily mean that the meetings will hold every week, as that will be determined by the amount of work that needed to be done in the week under consideration. From the Presidential Villa, Landry Lassisi for Channels Television News.
A news round ends with the Israel-Hamas crisis. During the week, a huge explosion hit Gaza hospital, which killed hundreds. Palestinian officials blame an Israeli airstrike for the huge blast and fireball which engulfed the Al-Aqli Al-Arabi hospital. But Israel has denied responsibility, saying the blast was caused by a failed rocket launch by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad militant group, which also denies the blame. The United Nations says half of Gaza's population has already been driven from their homes. Israel had ordered civilians to evacuate the entire northern half of the enclave, forcing families to cram into houses, schools, and makeshift shelters in the southern half, even as it continues to pound the breadth of the enclave with airstrikes. And that's News Round for this week. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikile. Goodbye.